I hit the jackpot and won millions in the lottery, but I didn't tell a soul. I asked my family for help just to see who'd step up. Only one person did. I held a lottery ticket worth millions, but instead of pure joy, all I felt was a cold, gripping dread. Because I knew deep down, this money wasn't just going to change my life. It was going to expose the brutal truth about my own family, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what I might find. My name is Cassie, I'm 34, and until last Tuesday my life was painfully ordinary. I worked as an accountant in Portland, pulling 60-hour weeks just to barely make ends meet in my small one-bedroom apartment. Every morning, I woke up with the same persistent worry about bills and deadlines. It was a constant grind. You see, my family dynamic was complicated. My parents, Gregory and Diane, divorced when I was 14 and both remarried quickly. My dad, a high school physics teacher, married Stephanie, whose expensive taste dwarfed his income. My mom married Warren, a successful businessman who clung to every penny like it was his last. Then there were my siblings. Lisa, my younger sister, was the golden child, Ivy League, married to a surgeon, perfect house, perfect kids. And Jason, my older brother, who despite all his charm and intelligence, was a master at bouncing from job to job, relationship to relationship, and borrowing money. His calls always followed the same pattern. Desperate plea, emotional promise to repay, then radio silence until the next crisis. Even our extended family was a minefield. My Aunt Martha, my mom's sister, was the anomaly. A kind elementary school teacher living paycheck to paycheck, but always there when it truly mattered. She drove an ancient Honda. Her small apartment overflowed with books, and she never ever complained. On the flip side was my Aunt Heather, my dad's sister, who married wealthy and never let anyone forget it. Holidays with her were a parade of critiques and backhanded comments about my career, my apartment, my single status. Her son, Ryan, was just as entitled, but none of the wealth, with a gambling problem everyone pretended didn't exist. My history of helping them had left me utterly jaded. When Jason needed $5,000 for rehab 3 years ago, I emptied my meager savings, only to find out months later he never even went. When Lisa needed help with her wedding, I put $2,000 on my credit card. 5 years later, I'm still waiting. And my dad? After I sent him money for roof repairs, I saw photos of him and Stephanie vacationing in Cancun the next month. It was gut-wrenching every time. The only person who knew the full extent of these betrayals was my best friend, Charlotte. She's a nurse, she understood struggle, and she never judged my complicated feelings. She was my anchor, the voice of reason when I felt myself turning bitter. Even at work, I felt invisible. My boss, Arnold, was a credit-stealing pro, and my colleague Derek consistently left early, dumping his work on me. Despite working my tail off, I never got the recognition. Buying lottery tickets was my one small indulgence, a weekly ritual that my family loved to mock. My mom called it attacking people who can't do math. My brother joked I should just give him the money directly. My dad lectured me on probability, but there was something hopeful about those tickets, a tiny chance at the freedom I desperately craved. My dreams felt so distant. Travel, a master's degree, enough savings so a car repair wouldn't send me spiraling. Every month was a tightrope walk of bills and budgeting. I clipped coupons, drove a 10-year-old Corolla making concerning noises, and mastered the art of appearing fine while my mind constantly crunched numbers. This was my life. Ordinary, often difficult, sometimes lonely, but stable in its own way. I had no idea how one piece of paper was about to shatter everything. The day I bought the winning ticket was actually my birthday. I just survived another grueling week at work where Arnold had, predictably, stolen credit for a major financial strategy I developed. I stopped at Gus's corner market, just like every Friday. Gus, a kind older man, knew all his regulars. "Happy birthday, Cassie," he called out. "Thanks, Gus." "The usual, please, and maybe one extra for good luck," I replied, handing him $20 instead of my usual $10. He winked. "Birthday splurge. Maybe today's your lucky day." Instead of a quick pick, I chose my own numbers on a whim. My birth month and day, 3 and 16. My mother's birthday, 12. My father's, 21. Martha's, 9. And Charlotte's, 30. 6 numbers representing the most important people in my life, even the ones who had disappointed me. That evening I ordered Thai, opened a bottle of birthday wine from Charlotte, and settled in for a quiet night. The lottery drawing was at 8 p.m., but I barely paid attention, scrolling social media, seeing posts of everyone else's exciting birthday celebrations. At 8:30 I remembered the tickets. Lazily I picked up my phone to check. The first number matched, 3. I smiled slightly. The second, 16. My heart rate picked up. Third, 12. Fourth, 21. My palms were sweating. Fifth, 9. I held my breath. Sixth and final number, 30. I stared at my phone, an eternity passing. This couldn't be right. I must have misread it. I checked again and again. I turned on the TV and rewound to the live drawing. My numbers appeared on the screen one after another. My hand shook so violently I dropped the remote. "No way," I whispered to the empty apartment. "No way." According to the lottery website, I was the sole winner of $47 million. After taxes, it would be around $28 million. An unfathomable sum for someone who had been excited earlier that day about a 10% off laundry detergent coupon. I didn't sleep at all. Instead, I spent hours researching lottery winners online. What I found was disturbing. Lives falling apart, families torn by greed, friends and distant relatives appearing with sob stories and outstretched hands. Winners bankrupt within 5 years, more miserable than before they won. One article called the lottery the quickest path to losing everything you care about. As the sun rose, I made my decision. I would claim the money, but I would tell no one. Not my parents, not my siblings, not even Charlotte. Not right away. I needed time to process this, to make a plan, to understand what this money would mean for my life before everyone else tried to tell me what to do with it. That morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and made an appointment with Philip Montgomery, an attorney specializing in financial planning. As I sat in his downtown high-rise waiting room, clutching my ordinary purse with a winning ticket inside, I felt like a complete imposter. "Miss Wilson." Philip greeted me, extending his hand. He was in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes behind expensive glasses. "What can I help you with today?" I took a deep breath and placed the ticket on his desk. "I need to know how to claim this without anyone finding out it was me." His eyes widened briefly, then he nodded professionally. "I see. You've come to the right place." For the next 2 hours, Philip explained everything. How to claim through a blind trust, how taxes would work, the importance of assembling a team of financial advisors. The biggest mistake winners make, he told me, is telling too many people too quickly. Once that happens, there's no going back. I nodded, relieved my gut instinct had been correct. I want to do this right. I don't want this money to ruin my life. Leaving Philip's office, clutching a folder full of documents, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. I had more money than I'd ever dreamed of, yet I couldn't share this life-changing news with anyone. I would be living a double life, pretending to be the same struggling accountant while secretly being a multimillionaire. Over the next 2 weeks, we established the trust, claimed the winnings, and set up investment accounts. A comprehensive financial plan ensured I'd never worry about money again, even if I lived to be 100. The money was real, sitting in accounts under my control. Yet, my day-to-day life remained unchanged. I still went to work, still complained about bills with coworkers, still drove my old Corolla. The secrecy was starting to weigh on me. I found myself wondering about my family. Would they be happy for me if they knew? Would they respect my boundaries? Or would they see me as nothing more than a walking ATM? The questions haunted me, and gradually an idea began to form. What if I could find out how they would react to my newfound wealth without actually revealing it? What if I could test their character before deciding who to share my secret with? The plan crystallized one night as I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I would create a scenario where I desperately needed financial help. Not a ridiculous amount, but enough to be significant. I'd approach each family member with the same story, the same request, and see who would help me without the prospect of gaining anything in return. Only then would I truly know who deserved to be part of my new life. The next day, I met Philip again to ensure my finances were impenetrable. Everything was in order. "Your financial future is secure, Cassandra," he assured me. "You could stop working tomorrow if you wanted to." The thought was tempting, but I knew an abrupt lifestyle change would raise too many questions. "I think I'll stay at my job for now," I replied. "At least until I figure some things out." That evening, I invited Charlotte over. As we sat on my small balcony with glasses of wine, I decided to share part of my plan. I couldn't keep everything bottled up, and I trusted her more than anyone. "I'm thinking about conducting a sort of experiment with my family," I began carefully. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "What kind of experiment?" I took a deep breath. "I'm going to tell them I lost my job and need financial help, just to see who actually cares enough to help me when I need it." Charlotte's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Cassie, that seems manipulative. Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired of being the only one who helps when others need it," I said, not quite meeting her eyes. "I want to know who would be there for me if the tables were turned." "But lying to test people? That doesn't sound like you," Charlotte said, setting down her wine glass. "Why not just ask them how they feel? Have an honest conversation." I laughed humorlessly. "Right, because my family is so great at honest conversations. You know how they are, Charlotte. You've seen how they treat me. Still, this feels wrong. What are you trying to prove?" "I'm not trying to prove anything," I insisted, though that wasn't entirely true. "I just want to know who actually cares about me versus who sees me as a resource." Charlotte shook her head. "I think you're going to hurt yourself more than anyone else with this. But I know that look in your eye. You've already made up your mind." She was right. I spent that day crafting my story, making sure it was believable, but not so dramatic it would raise suspicion. I would tell everyone that the marketing firm had suddenly shut down after losing its biggest clients, and I needed $5,000 to cover rent and medical expenses until I found a new position. It was significant, but not outrageous, and certainly not beyond the means of most of my family members. I made a list: my mother and stepfather Warren, my father and stepmother Stephanie, my sister Lisa and her husband Paul, my brother Jason, my Aunt Martha, my Aunt Heather, and my cousin Ryan. 10 people, all of whom had turned to me for help at some point. All of whom I had supported, financially or emotionally, when they needed it. The next day, I practiced with Charlotte, who reluctantly agreed to help. You need to sound genuinely distressed but not desperate, she advised. And have specific details ready about the company closing. They might ask questions. I nodded, taking notes. I'll say the CEO had been embezzling funds and the company is under investigation. That explains why it happened so suddenly, and why I might not get my final paycheck. And your job search? I've been applying everywhere, but the market's tight, especially for specialized accounting. I have some interviews but nothing definite yet. And my emergency fund is depleted from some recent medical tests. I had thought through every detail, creating a scenario that would elicit sympathy without raising too many questions. As I finalized my plan, I felt a twinge of guilt. Was Charlotte right? Was this manipulative? But then I remembered all the times I had emptied my savings to help these same people, often at great personal cost, and my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about testing them. It was about protecting myself and my future. I made a prediction list. My mother? Probably offer some help but less than I needed. My father? Lecture me. Maybe send a small amount. Lisa? Claim she couldn't do to kids' expenses. Jason? Definitely no money. Warren and Stephanie? Refuse outright. Aunt Heather? Judge my poor life choices. Cousin Ryan? Promise help that would never materialize. The only person I had real hope for was Aunt Martha. Despite having the least to give, she had always been the most generous. But even with her, I tried to keep my expectations low. $5,000 was a lot of money for a public school teacher living alone. The plan was set. Over the next week, I would reach out to each family member individually, tell them the same story, and see who stepped up. Only then would I decide who deserved to know about my lottery win. Only then would I know who truly cared about me beyond what I could do for them. With a mix of anticipation and dread, I picked up my phone and made the first call. It was time to find out who my real family was. I started with my mother, Diane. She'd always prided herself on being a nurturing parent. Surely she'd help. My hands trembled as I dialed. She answered on the third ring, sounding distracted. Hi, Mom, I said, intentionally straining my voice. Cassie, is everything okay? You sound upset. I launched into my prepared story. The company closing, lost wages, my precarious financial situation. As I spoke, I could hear her breathing change, growing more concerned. Oh, honey, that's terrible, she said when I finished. Have you applied for unemployment? What about your emergency fund? I explained unemployment would take weeks and my fund was depleted from recent medical tests, letting her imagination fill in the blanks. I hate to ask this, Mom, but I need help. About $5,000 to cover rent and medical bills until I find something new. I promise I'll pay you back. A long pause. Oh, Cassie, you know Warren and I just put a down payment on the lake house. We're pretty cash poor right now. Her voice took on a defensive tone. Have you asked your father? Or Lisa? Paul makes good money. I was hoping to avoid asking Dad, I said truthfully. And Lisa has the kids and their private school tuition. Well, let me talk to Warren and see what we can do, she said finally. But I can't promise anything. You know how tight he is with money, especially when it comes to. I knew. Warren never considered me his responsibility. Sure, Mom. Just let me know. Rent's due next week. I will, honey. And I'm so sorry about your job. These things always work out for the best, though. Maybe this is a sign you should look at changing careers to something more stable. After hanging up, I noted her response. Concern but immediate deflection. I suspected Warren would conveniently make them unable to help. The next day I met my father, Gregory, for coffee. I chose a public place, hoping he'd be less likely to react negatively. You look tired, was his greeting. I gave him a weak smile and launched into my story. His face remained impassive, occasionally nodding or frowning. When I finished by asking for $5,000, he leaned back, crossed his arms. Cassandra, I've always taught you about financial responsibility. His teacher voice came out. This is exactly why I told you to keep 6 months of expenses saved at all times. What happened to that plan? Life happened, Dad, I replied, trying to keep frustration out of my voice. Medical bills, car repairs. Not everyone can afford to set aside that much money. He sighed heavily. And now you expect others to bail you out. What about your spending habits? Do you really need that apartment? Your cable and streaming services. For the next 20 minutes he lectured me. Not once did he offer any actual help. I would love to help you, Cassie, but Stephanie and I are focusing on our retirement. We can't afford to dip into those funds. It would be financially irresponsible. He patted my hand patronizingly. This will be a good learning experience for you. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom before we make necessary changes. I nodded, fighting back tears that were only partly for show. Even expecting this, it hurt. My sister Lisa was next. I drove to her beautiful suburban home on a Saturday. Paul was golfing, giving us privacy. "Cassie, what a surprise," she exclaimed. "Kids are at swimming. Come in." Her house was immaculate. Expensive furniture, professional family photos everywhere. As we sat in her gourmet kitchen, sipping lattes from her commercial-grade espresso machine, I told her my situation. "Oh my God, that's awful," she gasped, squeezing my hand. "I can't believe they just closed like that. Poor you." Her sympathy seemed genuine, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Then I mentioned needing $5,000. "Oh," she said, her expression shifting. "Well, this is actually not a great time. We just bought the new Audi last month, and the kids' tuition was due. Plus, we're redoing the master bathroom." She glanced around nervously. "Paul handles most of our finances, and he's really strict about our budget." "I understand," I said quietly. "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate." I know, she said quickly. "Let me talk to Paul. Maybe we can help with a smaller amount. Or maybe you could move in with us temporarily. The guest room is being used for storage, but we could clear it out." I thanked her for the offer, explaining moving would be difficult with my job search. She promised to call me after speaking with Paul, but the way she avoided eye contact told me everything I needed to know. My brother Jason was perhaps the most disappointing. After sending him a detailed text, he responded with, "That sucks, sis. Really tight right now myself. We'll call you later." He never did. My follow-up messages went unanswered. Calls went straight to voicemail. This from the same brother who had borrowed thousands from me over the years, always with tearful promises of repayment that never materialized. My stepmother Stephanie was blunt when I called her, not even bothering with a pretense of sympathy. "Cassandra, I'm sure this is difficult, but Warren and I are not in a position to help. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you to learn better financial management skills. Have you considered downsizing your apartment or getting a roommate?" When I pointed out I had helped them with repairs to their vacation cabin last year, she bristled. "That was different. That was a family property that you also enjoy using." The fact that I'd only been invited once in 5 years apparently didn't matter. My stepfather Warren was even worse. "You are not my daughter," he said plainly. "I have supported your mother for years, but your financial problems are your own. Perhaps you should have chosen a more lucrative career path." My cousin Ryan initially seemed sympathetic, promising to definitely help out. He even suggested meeting for lunch to give me a check. But an hour before, he texted saying something came up and he'd reschedule. He never did, eventually stopping responding to my messages altogether. Aunt Heather's response was least surprising, but still painful. "Well, Cassandra, I always said that company of yours seemed unstable. I told your father you should have taken that job at the bank, but no one listens to me." She then proceeded to tell me about all the financial troubles other family members had experienced, and how they had overcome them without begging for handouts. By that evening, Lisa had already texted me that Aunt Heather was telling everyone about my financial irresponsibility. After a week of rejections, half-promises, and outright silence, I was emotionally exhausted. The experiment had confirmed my worst fears, and the reality was still painful to accept. 7 people who had repeatedly asked for and received my help over the years either couldn't or wouldn't return the favor when I needed them. Then my phone rang. It was Aunt Martha. "Cassie, honey, I just heard from your mother about the job. Are you okay?" Her voice was warm with genuine concern. I hadn't even reached out to Martha yet, planning to call her the next day. The fact that she called me first after hearing secondhand spoke volumes. "I'm hanging in there," I said, the emotion in my voice now entirely real. "Listen, I want to help. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow?" My treat, of course. The next day, we met at a small diner near her apartment. Martha looked exactly as she always did. Silver-streaked hair in a simple ponytail, jeans and a cardigan with mismatched buttons. She hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry about your job, sweetheart. That company never deserved you anyway." As we ate, she asked thoughtful questions about my job search and offered to reach out to former colleagues with business connections. Then, after our plates were cleared, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I want you to take this," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's $3,000. I know it's not the full amount, but it should help with the rent at least." I stared at the envelope in shock. "Martha, I can't take this. This is too much." "Nonsense. Family helps family, and I want you to know something else." She reached across the table and took my hand. "If you need a place to stay to save on rent, my sofa pulls out into a bed. It's not fancy, but you're welcome to stay as long as you need to." Tears filled my eyes, and this time they were completely genuine. "Thank you," I whispered, overwhelmed by her generosity. "Now don't you worry about paying this back right away," she continued. "Get back on your feet first. Find a job you actually like this time. Life is too short to work somewhere that doesn't appreciate you." As we left the diner, Martha hugged me again. "You're going to be okay, Cassie. You're smart and capable. This is just a bump in the road." Driving home, I clutched the envelope containing $3,000. More money than I knew Martha could comfortably spare. The contrast between her response and the rest of my family's couldn't have been more stark. The only person who had offered genuine help was the one with the least to give. After meeting with Martha, I did some research that left me stunned. That $3,000 represented nearly all of her savings. I also discovered she had been quietly dealing with complications from type 2 diabetes. Her medication costs had recently increased, and she'd been picking up extra tutoring work to make ends meet. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow. Martha, who had so little, had given me almost everything she had without hesitation or conditions. Meanwhile, my mother, who had recently spent $8,000 on a bathroom renovation, couldn't spare $5,000 to help her daughter with rent and medical bills. The next day, I invited Martha to my apartment for dinner. As she settled onto my worn couch, I noticed for the first time how tired she looked, the fine lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. "Martha, I need to tell you something," I began, setting a cup of tea in front of her. "I haven't been completely honest with you." Her expression remained open, curious rather than concerned. "What is it, honey?" "I didn't lose my job. The company is fine. I still have my position." The words tumbled out quickly. I made up the story to see who in the family would help me if I needed it. Martha was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I see. Are you angry with me?" I asked, suddenly afraid of losing the one genuine relationship I had discovered through this experiment. She considered the question. "No, not angry. Sad maybe. Sad that you felt you needed to test people this way." She took a sip of her tea. "But I understand why you did it. Our family hasn't always been kind to you. You were the only one who offered to help," I told her, my voice catching. "Everyone else had excuses or just ignored me entirely." Martha sighed. "People show you who they are when giving becomes inconvenient. I learned that lesson the hard way myself." "What do you mean?" She set down her cup and folded her hands in her lap. "My ex-husband, Robert. Did I ever tell you why we really divorced?" I shook my head. The family story had always been vague, something about growing apart. "I came into a small inheritance when my grandmother died, about $50,000. Not a fortune, but significant for us at the time. Robert immediately had all these plans for the money, mainly investing in his friend's business ventures." She smiled ruefully. "I wanted to save it for our future. Maybe buy a small house eventually. We fought about it for months. One day, I discovered he had forged my signature and withdrawn most of the money. By the time I found out, it was gone, invested in a restaurant that failed within a year." She shook her head. "When I confronted him, do you know what he said? That it was our money, not just mine, and he had as much right to it as I did, as if my name on the inheritance meant nothing." I was shocked. I had no idea. The family preferred the growing apart story. Less messy. She reached for my hand. "The point is, I learned that some people see you as a resource rather than a person, and it's a painful lesson." "I'm so sorry that happened to you," I said, squeezing her hand. "It was a long time ago, but it taught me something important about money and relationships." She looked at me intently. "Money doesn't just reveal who others truly are, Cassie. It reveals who we are too. How we use it, how we share it, how we talk about it. It's a powerful mirror." Her words resonated deeply. In that moment, I made a decision. "Martha, there's something else I need to tell you. Something big." I took a deep breath. "I won the lottery 3 weeks ago. $47 million. Her eyes widened, but she remained silent, waiting for me to continue. "I haven't told anyone else. Not my parents, not Lisa or Jason, not even Charlotte. You're the first to know." "Oh, Cassie," she breathed. That is life-changing." "I know. And that's why I did this test. I needed to know who would be there for me without knowing about the money." Martha nodded slowly. "I understand that, but what will you do now?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. The money's secure. I have good financial advisors, but I don't know how to handle the family." Martha considered this. "You know, you don't owe anyone anything, Cassie. Not even me." "But I want to help you," I insisted. "Your medical expenses, a better apartment. Whatever you need." She smiled gently. "I don't need anything from you, sweetheart. I'm happy with my life. My apartment is small, but it's full of things I love. My car runs most of the time. I have my students and my books, and now this wonderful secret with my favorite niece." She patted my hand. "Just knowing you're secure and happy would be enough for me." Her selflessness brought tears to my eyes. Here was someone who had given me almost everything she had when she thought I needed it, and now was asking for nothing in return when she knew I had millions. As we continued talking into the night, the contrast between Martha and the rest of my family became even more stark. While I had been conducting my experiment, word had spread through the family about my supposed financial troubles. Instead of prompting concern, it had mainly generated gossip and judgment. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Heard you asked Lisa for money too. You should have told me you were asking everyone. Feels like you're playing us against each other." Another came from my father. Stephanie tells me you've been calling everyone for handouts. This is exactly the kind of irresponsible behavior I warned you about. The family had turned my requests for help into evidence of my character flaws, rather than an opportunity to show compassion. And in doing so, they had revealed everything I needed to know about the true nature of our relationships. The morning after my conversation with Martha, I met with Philip to discuss my long-term financial plans. Now that I had clarity about my family relationships, I could make decisions about my future with open eyes. I want to set up a trust for my Aunt Martha, I told him. Something that will cover her medical expenses and provide her with a comfortable retirement, but in a way that feels like a gift rather than charity. She's very proud. Philip nodded, making notes. We can structure it as a family trust that provides a monthly stipend. She wouldn't have to manage a large sum all at once, which can be overwhelming for someone not used to wealth. Perfect. And I want to buy her a small house near wherever I decide to live. Nothing extravagant, just comfortable and accessible for someone with health issues. We spent the next hour discussing investment strategies, charitable foundations, and my own living situation. I had decided to give notice at my accounting job and focus on establishing a nonprofit organization aimed at helping elderly people living alone, inspired by Martha's situation and the many others like her. What about the rest of your family? Philip asked cautiously. Do you plan to tell them about the winnings? I shook my head. Not right now. Maybe not ever. But I do want to arrange a family meeting to clear the air about my financial troubles. Later that day, I called Charlotte and finally told her the truth about everything. The lottery win and the family experiment. After her initial shock, she understood why I had kept it secret. So what now? She asked. Are you going to become one of those eccentric millionaires who still clips coupons and drives a beat-up car? I laughed. No, but I'm not going to suddenly start buying Bentleys either. I want this money to mean something, to do good. Starting with Martha. She deserves it. Charlotte agreed. And what about everyone else? The ones who failed your test? I'm still figuring that out. I've called a family meeting for this weekend. I told them I have an important announcement. When Sunday arrived, I was surprised to see everyone show up at my apartment. My mother and Warren, my father and Stephanie, Lisa and Paul, even Jason, who had been ignoring my calls for weeks. Aunt Heather arrived with a disapproving frown already in place. Aunt Martha came last, giving me a secret smile as she entered. As everyone settled into my small living room, looking around with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment, I stood before them feeling strangely calm. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know there have been rumors going around about my financial situation, and I wanted to address them directly. My mother shifted uncomfortably. Jason suddenly became very interested in his phone. Lisa and Paul exchanged glances. The truth is, I'm fine. I found a new job with better pay and benefits. This was technically true, as I had just appointed myself executive director of my new foundation with a modest salary. I'll be transitioning to that position next month. Well, that's wonderful news, my mother said with obvious relief. We've all been so worried. I noticed several faces relax around the room. They had come expecting either to be asked for money again, or perhaps to stage some sort of intervention about my financial habits. Instead, they were getting good news that required nothing from them. So why all the drama about needing money? My father asked, his tone accusatory. Why ask everyone for help if you had a job lined up? I met his gaze steadily. The job came through recently, and when I was in trouble, I reached out to my family. That's what family is supposed to be for, right? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Well, we all have our own financial commitments, Stephanie said defensively. It's not always possible to help, even when we want to. Of course, I agreed. We all have to make choices about our priorities. I turned to Jason. Speaking of which, Jason, I noticed you never responded to my messages when I needed help. Yet, you had no problem asking me for $3,000 last Christmas for your rent. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I was going through some stuff, and I didn't have any money to give you. You didn't even call me back, I pointed out. That would have been free. The meeting continued in this vein, with me calmly but firmly addressing the hypocrisy and absence of support I had experienced. No one admitted any wrongdoing. There were excuses, justifications, and even some attempts to turn the blame back on me for making everyone feel guilty. As they filed out after an uncomfortable hour, I felt a strange sense of closure. I hadn't told them about the lottery win, but I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. The money had given me something perhaps more valuable than wealth itself. The courage to see my relationships clearly, and to set boundaries accordingly. Martha stayed behind after everyone left, helping me clean up the coffee cups and plates. You did well, she said quietly. That couldn't have been easy. It was actually easier than I expected, I replied. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of disappointing them, because I realized their opinion of me was never based on who I really am. Martha smiled. That's a powerful realization. So what happens next? Next, I said, we start looking at houses for both of us. 1 year later, my life was unrecognizable from the day I had first discovered those matching lottery numbers. I had moved into a beautiful but modest home in a quiet neighborhood with a garden that brought me joy each morning. Just 3 blocks away was Martha's new house, a single-story craftsman with wide doorways to accommodate her walker on days her diabetes made walking difficult. My nonprofit organization, Second Family, had grown beyond my expectations. We provided companionship, home repairs, and financial assistance to elderly people living alone, with a special focus on those estranged from their families. The work was rewarding in a way my accounting career had never been, and we had already helped over 200 seniors in our city. Charlotte had eventually joined the organization as our outreach coordinator, bringing her nursing expertise and compassionate nature to our mission. She and I still had our weekly wine nights, though now they took place on my comfortable patio rather than in my cramped apartment. My relationship with my family had shifted into something more distant, but also more honest. I maintained occasional contact, polite birthday calls, and holiday gatherings, but the pretense of closeness had fallen away. Without the expectation of emotional intimacy that had never actually existed, our interactions became less painful. None of them knew about my lottery winnings. As far as they were concerned, I had simply found success with my new career in nonprofit management. They seemed to accept this explanation without much curiosity about the details, which told me everything I needed to know about their interest in my life. There had been moments of temptation to reveal the truth, particularly when Jason called asking for money for a new business venture, or when Lisa complained about the cost of her kitchen renovation. But each time I remembered the silence when I had needed help, and the choice became clear. Interestingly, there had been occasions when family members genuinely needed assistance. When my father had a minor heart attack and faced unexpected medical bills, I anonymously paid them through the hospital's patient assistance fund. When my cousin Ryan finally entered rehab for his gambling addiction, I made an anonymous donation to cover his treatment. They never knew the source of these gifts, and I preferred it that way. Martha and I had dinner together at least twice a week. Her health had improved dramatically with proper medical care and less financial stress. She had retired from teaching but volunteered at a literacy program 3 days a week, still sharing her love of books with children who needed it. "You know what still amazes me?" she said one evening as we sat on her porch watching the sunset. "How differently everything could have turned out if you had announced your lottery win right away." I nodded, considering this alternate reality. The family would have suddenly become very attentive and loving, I imagine. "And you would never have known what was real," Martha added. "That knowledge, painful as it was, gave you freedom." She was right. The experiment had been painful but illuminating. It had shown me who deserved a place in my life and who didn't. It had revealed the true nature of relationships I had spent years trying to strengthen despite their fundamental imbalance. The greatest lesson I had learned was not about others, but about myself. Before the lottery, I had defined my worth by what I could give to others. Constantly trying to earn love through sacrifice and generosity, I had allowed myself to be used because I believed that was what family meant, what love required. Now I understood that real love, the kind Martha had shown me, didn't keep a balance sheet. It gave freely without expectation of return, but it also respected boundaries and dignity. It was honest and consistent, present in good times and bad. I had initially kept my winning secret out of fear, worried that money would corrupt my relationships. What I had not anticipated was how the secret would clarify them. Instead, stripping away pretense and revealing truth. The money had not changed who anyone was. It had simply illuminated who they had been all along. My life now was rich in ways that had nothing to do with my bank account. I had purpose through my foundation, genuine connection with Martha and Charlotte, and a hard-won understanding of my own worth that no external validation could shake. Perhaps most importantly, I had peace. The constant anxiety about finances that had been my lifelong companion was gone. But so too was the desperate need for approval from people incapable of giving it. I had built a life aligned with my values rather than my insecurities. Martha reached over and patted my hand, bringing me back to the present moment. "You did good, kiddo. Not just with the money but with what you learned." I smiled at her, overwhelmed with gratitude for this woman who had shown me what family truly meant. I had a good teacher. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the shock of those matching numbers to the pain of rejection, to the joy of creating something meaningful with my unexpected fortune, the money had changed my life, yes, but not in the ways I had initially feared or hoped. It had simply given me the freedom to see clearly and choose wisely. The most valuable thing I had gained had nothing to do with millions in the bank. It was the understanding that the people who deserve a place in your life are not those who are there when you have everything to give, but those who stay when you have nothing to offer but yourself.